So I have went ahead and compiled some of the JavaScript Graal simulation code. So basically what it is, and it's open source now, so I would go ahead and download that if you want. I just feel like at this point, what I would really like people to do is to take the fucking code and free yourself from Unix Mad. You don't need him. This simulation, it's using the old NW format version of Graal files because I don't know exactly the encryption algorithm on the old files. I'm sure some of you could find that, and if you can, great, you can push it into the repository. Where we're at now is this is taking some of the tile defs. You can download those. You can download the different web files in the webfiles.zip. This is live on GitHub, and that would be at the Jestingly GitHub Graal repository. So what you can do here is you can go ahead and just kind of look through some of the folders, and I'll just give you a brief rundown. I haven't done the README yet. This needs a lot of good documentation, but everything in here is pretty straightforward, and a lot of this stuff you can just use for whatever and continue to expand upon it. This is a GNU license, so definitely make sure that you continue to, if you add to it, that you keep it open source, and that moving forward, the code and stuff can be used and expanded upon. So like things that would be really beneficial would be like adding things like README signs. NPCs shouldn't be too hard to incorporate, or just something like GScript. That is not too difficult. Just find a way to parse, different text and stuff like that. I had implemented a system that you can kind of simulate Windows, so you can start creating like different apps and plugging in there to create a tiler if you wanted to. I actually created a tile level editor some years ago. It was kind of in a different, what should I call it, content management system that I'd created. So, but I wanted to simplify that, and so I kind of scratched that code, but I learned a lot while doing it. And so anyway, this one is a lot simpler and a lot cleaner. So I'm not going to recycle that, but I can tell you that creating the tile editor, level editor, was not difficult. It was actually fairly simple. And you can reuse some of these assets. And I set it up in a way where you can actually create apps. You can create quote-unquote application objects. This is very object-oriented. You can go ahead and look through some of the folders and files to figure out how that works. But just diving into it without jumping too far ahead, I will give you a brief rundown of how to work it and test it out. And then from there, I'll let you guys just, especially those of you who know how to code, do whatever the hell you want with it and move forward and try to, create your own games without having to go through Stefan or Unix Med anymore, who are absolute psychopaths and child predators. So what we're doing here is, in the main directory, again, README needs updated. I do want to reiterate that. And background, content, and manifest. So background.js, content.js, and manifest.json are three core files that are used to allow you to create like a plugin. You can take this code and port it into JavaScript without using the plugin. I set it up as a plugin just so that when you can simulate how to open up a game in any web. So if let's say you're reading Wikipedia, or you're browsing social media, or you're watching some type of video with an informational thing going on for work, but you want to you're doing it remote, right? Of course, nobody can see you. You want to start playing the game in the browser while you're doing other things. You can run it as a plugin. So that I'm giving you a starting point as a plugin because it just gives you a starting point. Where you want to do it, I would create, I would go ahead and just fork it. If you wanted to create something that was TypeScript, based for, I don't know, maybe Element or Phaser, whatever, you prefer. Or even if you just wanted to create something that was inside of just like a standalone HTML page, which you can do. Again, I'm kind of switching to C++ here. So where I'm leaving this off, I'm going to let you guys do what you want with it. So anyways, the manifest.json is going to be your central plugin file. And the central plugin file is what is used for creating browser plugins. And so I wanted to create it as a plugin so that you can like simulate it and feel it almost as if it was an application that you're opening. So when you go ahead into the manifest.json, that's where you're going to do your includes. But if you take this out of like a plugin format, you can find, ways to include your files. Like if you have like a PHP background that's, taking all the files from the different directories, you can import them that way. But the manifest.json is importing them manually, which you can just see if I open this. It'll go through, it'll tell you that it's like the JEST apps or the JEST apps version 0.0, which creates a pseudo operating system GUI in the browser and equips it with custom quote unquote apps that you create, which are very simple and easy to create. And then you can load them into any web page while browsing. Again, this would also be very easy to port over into Elements or a standalone application and even do like a mobile game. It's very easy to do if you know what you're doing, obviously. So like I did a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So this has a lot of the different things in here, a lot of different the classes that I've created that a game should have. Again, I've been coding since I was a child, so like all this stuff is like coded from the ground up. It has a lot of, some of it needs improvement. Some of it was kind of thrown together. For example, this right here, this is the JSOS global object. That could be organized a little bit better and not done on like a class-based system. But just like, I wanted to whip something up real quick. So that's still available. It's completely functional. There's nothing wrong with it. But that could be improved. There's a lot of things that could be improved. Some things may or may not be working. But I tried to remove everything that was just like hypothetical from the folders, whereas everything else, so I would say that 99% of this is functional and essential for what you want to use it for. Notifications, this is one of the things that isn't, quote unquote, essential or necessarily tied into the program. So that's, when I say that it's not working, what I mean is it's not implemented. But you could implement that if you wanted to, it's there. So, and it's not just a CSS file, it's also a JavaScript file. So anyway, if you go through here, you can see like a number of different things. There's the load bar. Some of this stuff are remnants from things that I was creating originally before I decided to just go ahead and whip up a game. And I had recycled a lot of old code that I've been working on from 2019 through 2021 or something. So anyways, going through there, you'll see like the anchor, the animation files, the window, quote unquote, window simulations, and then you can see a lot of the game files that are very just kind of organized into the components folder. And so these are just kind of being imported through the manifest.json. This could be optimized very much, but you can do your includes inside of the manifest.json and then inside of the content.js. So background's just kind of handling the plugin aspect of it for like a browser plugin. Inside of the content.js is where the program's getting loaded up. So the JSOS is just kind of like your global object, which is the JSOS interface object. And then you have the JEST environment, which is handled for like the operating, quote unquote, pseudo operating OS GUI simulation. And then the JEST environment also handles like, if you want to have like, if you wanted to include libraries as like a plugin, your own custom quote unquote stylized libraries or things. I at least just added that capability in there. I don't have any libraries from anybody else in here. All this stuff is my own code. But I wanted to create a system where you could add like libraries of your own. There's also like a hooks system in there, which isn't really fleshed out fully yet, but you can do like hooks and calling, the different hooks. But right here is where the application gets started. So it's called JEST Play. And that is where you're going to find the code for the game. So that is located in JS. And then inside of apps JEST, you will see this is the main program, is jest.js, and it just extends another class that I called application. And application kind of ties into Windows, so you can have like that pseudo window and load things up. That's all just kind of GUI stuff. You can pull yourself out of that if you want to. This right here is like the main program entry. So the JEST program here is like it's just this application, and it sets up windows. It's creates these pseudo windows, and then down here you have like your asynchronous events and things that are loading. I apologize if some of like the spacing is off. I don't know what's going. Like I use Pulsar, so a lot of the stuff should be tabbed. Like in my program, it's all lined up. For some reason, it's not on here. If you use Pulsar, it should all line up and look really, really nice. The code itself and look really, really well written and organized and easy to read. So you have your configuration file, and that's where you're going to add like your web root folder for the assets. Everything else is kind of just handling. So like this is like a fake, well, not a fake. It's like a custom debugger application. But when I say fake, I mean that it's not tied into the browser. It's a custom debugging class for the application. And so you can add new things to the features of the debugger. This has the ability where you can like colorize some of the anchors. Like a lot of objects are tied to what is referred to as an anchor object. That's another class that you can add like X and Y to, your Z value, which isn't really being used right now, but it's in there. And then there's a width and a height and stuff like that. You can colorize anchors. You can turn the anchor view mode on inside of Inspector. And so that can help you visualize a lot of what's happening with behind the scenes with objects. In terms of the timeout, this is your central timeout, which handles like the main rendering loop. And then you have your input and output handling object. So this is more for like keyboard input. And then this transmitter is for handling files, like downloading files. Let's see what else. The JEST gallery. This is where images are going to be loaded. So this is using the main folder that you're going to put into your configuration, and you can customize whatever that URL is. So to start, let's just go back. Hold on, this interface just got messed up. What do I do? Let's go into. Oh yeah, so clients, so like if you wanted to have like a tile editor, you would create like a separate client, and these both extend JEST. It should extend the JEST application object. And so this right here is like just for the play mode of the game, and it has different things for like the camera, the game board, the animator, file handling. The Phantascope is for like handling animations. I don't know why this interface is so terrible. It keeps jumping around. Whatever, I apologize. So anyways, yeah, so you can do a lot of different stuff in the JEST play. This is all through GitHub. I'm just browsing the GitHub website. You can go through this and see how it's setting up the game, how it's handling the different files. There's, a part for handling sounds, the JANI files, which is just like the GANI files. I renamed it with a J to signify that it's like the JEST ANI file, just in case you wanted to customize it and customize the parsing algorithm. This is just using the .nw file for the levels. The defs I kind of made up using different defs that were on the existing pix1.png tile set. And so right now it's mostly just handling on-wall blocking tiles, although there's a lot of other definitions I could add in there. I have them generated. They're just not in the file yet, but the blocking tiles are, and so you can test that out. And you can do whatever you want and create your own custom definitions for tiles. You can see how to do that in your web files and in the parser. So inside of here, you'll see that there's the sound handler, the JANI handler, the tile defs, the level parser. This is handling like your galleries of like image folders. So you have like one for sprites, one for headsets, one for body sets, shields, swords. And you just register like the category in the gallery. So the gallery handles categories of image folders. And so you can also give them like placeholder defaults. I'm not sure if that's exactly working just yet, but you can implement that easily because it's storing it in there. I added the capability to save it. I just haven't added one just yet to the player. But I wanted to throw something in here so you could see it. But there's a lot of things like, you code for modularity and flexibility. I just haven't implemented everything yet, but I do want to like make sure that things are flexible. So like if you have your placeholder here, then you'll want to make sure that you have something in the player class that's handling what that placeholder is, and then it's being done properly. Because it should at least be in the code. So in terms of the game board, this is your general game board canvas, which handles the main rendering visual. And then the soundboard handles sounds. You can register sound effects. You can do this stuff more automated. Right now I'm just custom pulling things in just for testing, just for show. The Fantascope, it pulls in that's going to handle like your animation stuff. And so in Overworld, this is going to be like where the levels are connected. If you create a grid it's basically a two-dimensional array of level names, then you can have an overworld that tells the game board or the compiler and the camera and all that stuff what the player's connected to. So like if you get to the edge of a level, you'll see into the next level. So that's actually fairly straightforward. You can see I'm creating basically like a generic snippet of an overworld here just by manually typing out level names. You would want to automate this in the end, but just showing you how it works. And then you load it loads the levels from the levels folder. Again, this stuff gets configured in your configuration, which I'll show you. But this is pulling it from your main web files folder. It downloads it. I tried to make sure that things are being done more like asynchronously, and that data is being downloaded, and you have tracking algorithms and callbacks, nice callbacks. So it's it's downloading things basically through an HTTP request. Right now you can have the option between like an XHTTP request or a fetch request in the transmission class. I'm not going to go too deep into that. But anyway, it's pulling in levels. And then I'm just manually adding the levels here to the overworld. You would obviously want this to be automated through like your overworld like grid folder or file. Like you would create like a grid of text files. This right here, I'm just manually simulating what an overworld would do. Ideally, overworlds would be generated through text files. Just the definitions of the grid. But here, if you look closely, you can see that there's like the first level, and then the second, and then the third, and then it goes down to row 2, and then it does 3 more levels, and then to row 3 and does 3 more levels. So it's simulating a grid, a two-dimensional array for the overworld so that you can see into each level. You can automate that, customize that, do whatever the hell you want. You know what I mean? The world is, or the sky's the limit there. So here we have like the main player class. This is where the player gets pulled in after all that stuff's kind of done. And then after the player gets pulled in, I commented out the catch just because right now I don't think that you need to error catch everything right off the bat, especially when you're trying to create your game. So, but that's in there in case you want to. Ideally, I think that like in your final published version, you could have a lot more catches, error catching. But, for now, it's commented out just in case you have errors in your code while compiling. In terms of the central animations, right after the player gets declared, we have the central ticker event. And this is tying back into that timeout, that central timeout I was telling you about. And so we take the timeout, and we add a tick event for the game board, and this is where the game board gets redrawn and updated, and so that like updates the level. And then the second one is the animator ticker, and that is, you can see it's in sequence on purpose so that like it adds layer by layer. That allows for your animations like players or NPCs and things like that. If you end up creating NPCs, you'll have to figure out how to do that. I haven't done that, implemented that into the code, but it's so easy. You guys, this stuff is so easy. But like right now, you can see like the Janimations of the player being orchestrated inside the player class, and it's being rendered inside of the animator ticker event. So that's on top of the game board, so that you have like the layer of the player being drawn over top of the level tiles, of course. And then down here, this is just kind of where things are closing out the client for the play application. You can see it's a very short object, and very easy. I'm not going to go too much into everything, but I did want to touch on that configuration class. So in your configuration class, you will see that you can declare where your web files are. So if you're using like a local, a LAMP or a MAMP or something, or even just your own local ports, maybe you have something set up with Python, you can have different local web addresses that are pulling in data through an HTTP request. So for here, I have one set up, just through my local host. And then I put a folder in there called web files, and then another folder inside of the files called files, just so that like if I wanted to have other things in my web files, like a folder for experimentation, I could. But the main central files folder would be where all of my assets for the game itself are being loaded and organized. So you have your web files. You can put like a little workshop of stuff in there if you want to, but all of your real assets that are being downloaded for the game should be through the synchronized and published files folder, which is again calibrated inside of the JEST configuration object class file. So you can do that in there, and if you do that, then you can go into, let's see, just some of these other folders and see, what all is in there and how it's working. Just to kind of show you how to download the code and to install it. The main thing you want to do to try it out is just download it, install it, and by install it, I mean just unzip it. Unzip your whole folder, zip this whole directory, unzip it into some folder on your desktop or wherever. Just go ahead and unzip it into your desktop, for example. And then your web files, this is what you're going to unzip into your local host. Again, and organize wherever you put them, make sure that you name it properly so that it knows where to pull from. Just make sure that your configuration web files string for this URL is matching where you have it stored on your own local host, or if you're doing it on server, whatever that web address is. I would then go into Firefox, for example. Let me just refresh this to show you. So in Firefox, if you type in the web address about debugging, so you can this allows me to, I'll just click this Firefox. I can load a temporary add-on, right? Yeah, let's just, for example, so if I take a temporary thing here, if I click my manifest.json, that'll load this up. It's already loaded up. If I remove it, you'll see. So let me just remove that. If I click my manifest.json in the main file, it loads up this plugin, which anytime you update your files while working, just make sure you hit reload before trying it out in the web browser. So inside of any type of window, you can, refresh your page just for clarity. You can see inside of the inspector, it has a bunch of outputs. So if there's any errors in your code, you'll be able to see that. But ideally, it should get down to here without a problem. And you'll see that little get thing at the bottom there that says favicon. But if you go up into your plugins drop down, you can then click the app itself. So this opens up this little this fake operating system, icon like app bar at the bottom. So I'll just click like this little hat, and then it opens up this window here. So the window is opened up. The window itself, like that needs more work. Again, this is open source. So if you click, so if you guys want to, help add to my code and stuff and improve it and make it more presentable, that's fine. But you can resize it and you can see that the game is successfully loaded. And that's how you open it up. So it's very easy, very straightforward. Go ahead and try it out. Do what you want to do with it. Customize stuff. Implement it into Node.js. Add to it. Make sure that you can create your own online mode. You can add new tile defs. You can do whatever you want to do. Make this thing fucking awesome. But this is a really good starting template. If nothing else, it's an opportunity for you guys to play around and learn, but it's very functional, and you could absolutely create mobile online games with it, and even desktop games if you wanted to use Phaser or Elements or whatever it is that you prefer to port the JavaScript. You could do things like minifiers, extreme minifiers to complicate the code to make it a little more secure. But yeah, go ahead and check it out and have as much fun as you wish.